10-Minute Murder contains depictions of actual crimes. What you are about to hear is real and violent in nature. Discretion is advised. This is 10-Minute Murder.
Welcome to 10-Minute Murder, the brief and bingeable true crime podcast. I'm Joe, the host, and thank you for being here. Before we get going today, let me take a quick second to genuinely thank you for listening. Of all the weird podcasts that you could be tuning into right now, you chose to give me your time, and I appreciate that more than I can possibly explain. I can't ask for any more than that. Okay, that's a lie. I can ask you to subscribe to 10-Minute Murder if you haven't already. Look, I know that you don't want to miss an episode, and I don't want you to miss an episode, so when you subscribe, you're probably not going to miss an episode. Now, today, we're talking about a serial killer that was a bit of a bully growing up. He wanted to sleep with his mother, and when the internet became a thing, you couldn't drag him away from computer porn. He was a stalker, a peeping Tom, serial rapist, and a cannibalistic killer. If you watch the TV show Criminal Minds, he inspired not one, but two different episodes, The Hollow Man and The Mill Creek Killer. Today, we're talking about a killer that described himself as pure evil, Sean Vincent Gillis. Sean Vincent Gillis was born in 1962 in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, to Yvonne and Norman Gillis. Not long after his birth, Norman abandoned the family. He was dealing with alcoholism and mental illness. Over the years of growing up, his father would continue to bounce in and out of mental health institutions. The relationship was strained, to put it mildly. Gillis's mother, who worked at a local TV station, had help raising him from his grandparents. He was a very well taken care of and well-loved boy. His mother called him her little blue-eyed angel. People who knew Sean Gillis at the time said he was a pretty average kid that made pretty average grades in school. But eventually, a violent side to his personality began to slowly emerge. He started bullying other kids in the school and in the neighborhood. On a strange occurrence, a neighbor reported that she heard loud banging noises outside 3 a.m. one morning. When she looked out the window, she saw Sean in his front yard beating on garbage cans. Despite his more and more frequent outbursts of violence and disruption, his mother later claimed during his murder trial that Sean was a well-adjusted child with a healthy social life. In high school, he and two of his friends became interested in satanic worship and enjoyed going to and watching the rituals performed by other local members. His trouble didn't start showing up on official police records until 1980, when he was 17 years old. He was arrested for minor infractions, later for traffic citations, DUI, possession of marijuana, and contempt of court. It just so happens that his father popped back into his life when Gillis was 17. Their newfound close relationship only lasted a year when he discovered that his father was now living as a gay man. It horrified Sean, and he cut off communications. After graduating high school, he got a job working for 7-Eleven, the convenience store. He made enough money to afford a new computer. Once he got that, he was pretty much useless at work. He spent every moment he could watching porn, and not just your garden variety porn. He liked porn that depicted rape, dismemberment, and death of women. It was around this time that his mom moved to Atlanta for a new job. Sean didn't want to go with her, so he stayed behind in Baton Rouge while his mother continued to pay his mortgage. He was also caught looking in the windows of a neighbor's house. He claimed that his cat was missing and that he was just looking for the cat. But the neighbors knew better and began to keep an eye on him. They hated him. He was creepy. Gillis, who claimed he started killing people because he was stressed, in 1994 had big David Koresh-looking glasses and a bushy mustache. Like, can't drink a milkshake without a straw, bushy. His very first murder was in March of that year when he killed 81-year-old Ann Bryan. He snuck in through an unlocked door that she had left open for the nurse. He tried to rape her in her home which was a retirement home with people nearby. As soon as he started to touch her, she screamed. To make her stop screaming, he quickly slit her throat and then proceeded to stab her 50 more times, nearly disemboweling and decapitating her in the process. His girlfriend knew about his porn addiction and ignored it, but she didn't know some of the vile things I mentioned before that he was into, despite him showing her photos of dead women. She would later say that she and Gillis never had sex. He didn't believe in sex, he told her. She thought it was weird, but seemed to be okay with it. Their relationship continued to be relatively good. It wasn't for another almost 5 years that Sean Gillis killed again. In January of 1999, he lured a prostitute into his car, telling her that he wanted to pay her for oral sex. Once inside, he tried to strangle her with a zip tie, but it didn't work out well, so he stabbed her to death before undressing and mutilating her body. In May of 1999, he spent 3 weeks stalking a lady he saw jogging in the South Baton Rouge area. Early one Sunday morning, he saw Hardy Schmidt jogging her normal route. He hit her with his car, got out, put a zip tie around her neck, and drug her back to his car. He took her to an isolated area where he raped and killed her. On November 12th, he killed Joyce Williams and then took her body to his home. He cut her into pieces on the kitchen floor. He ate some of her. When he finished, he dumped her body where it wouldn't be found until January of the next year. Strangely, Sean Gillis wasn't the only serial killer on the loose in Baton Rouge at the time. Derek Todd Lee, the Baton Rouge killer, was doing the same thing as Gillis, but where Gillis preferred sex workers, Lee was killing successful businesswomen. Sean Gillis admired the work of his counterpart and was excited that someone else was out doing the same thing he was doing. Gillis went on killing, and on February 26, 2004, killed his 8th and final victim, 43-year-old Donna Johnston. He killed her before cutting off her nipple, cutting off a tattoo from her thigh, and cutting off her left arm. He posed the body where he dumped it not far from Louisiana State University campus. He then took 45 pictures of her. A task force was assembled to look into the murder of Johnston, along with other Gillis murder victims. They were trying to determine which murders were from the active serial killer, Gillis, versus Derek Todd Lee, who had finally been captured. A couple months after the murder of Donna Johnston, investigators matched the tire tracks from the scene to a certain make and model car. It was pretty rare. They created a list of suspects based on that and requested DNA samples from those people, which included Sean Gillis. Police brought him in for questioning, where he said some pretty suspicious things, like mentioning if they found any blood in his car, it would be because his girlfriend had a very heavy period. He said it looked like a massacre took place in his front seat. They didn't have a search warrant for his car at the time, but after those statements, they tried to get one. Gillis's DNA turned out to be a match to hairs found on several of the victims. Once in custody, Sean Vincent Gillis confessed. Police searched his home where they found photos of Johnston and other victims, as well as body parts from victims that he said he used to stimulate himself when he remembered the murders. In court, he pled guilty to all charges and was sentenced to life in prison without parole. His girlfriend visited him in prison, where she asked him if he was actually guilty of those crimes. He hung his head and said, "I'm sorry, honey bunny." Years later, after he had been arrested and convicted for some of the murders, a friend of one of the victims wrote to him. She turned the letters over to the prosecution, and some of Gillis's words made it into the news. In the letter, Gillis expressed remorse for the murders, especially regret mutilating the bodies, and described himself as pure evil. Gillis also said that he sometimes committed murder without knowing why he was doing it. And that's today's 10-Minute Murder, the brief and bingeable true crime podcast. Thanks for listening today. Really do appreciate it. And quickly, before you go, look at the place you're listening right now and make sure you are subscribed. Depending on the app, it may not say the word subscribe. Like on Pandora, it says collect. But most of them have a way that you can hit a button that makes sure that you don't have to go searching for 10-Minute Murder every single time you want to listen. You can also connect with me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. See some of the visuals that go along with the episodes that you're hearing about. Nothing gross, though. Like today, you'll see the humongous glasses and bushy mustache of Sean Vincent Gillis. I'll put a link to where you can find the show on social media in the notes of this episode, or it's just as easy to type it into the search bar of Facebook or Instagram. Thank you for listening to 10 Minute Murder. Have a good night.